Nigeria will battle Tunisia in that is their group of the Africa Cup of Nations. And this is also two teams in the group who all won their first match. So Nigeria got a 2-1 victory against Tanzania. It got to a point, Tanzania almost got a goal, which would have been disastrous for Nigeria. But to be fair, Nigeria also had a lot of chances, created a lot of chances, and probably should have scored maybe more than 2 goals in the game. Even Osimhen scored the goal, which was ruled out for offside. For Tunisia, they had a comfortable 3-1 victory against, that is, Uganda. And they will now be playing their second game against Nigeria. So the good news for Nigeria is that from the first game they played, you had Alex Iwobi getting 2 assists in the game. Not only the assist he got, but he had an incredible performance in terms of controlling the game. He was on top of his game in that vein. We also had Ademola Lookman, who scored a goal. So finding his scoring boots in the AFCON, also scoring a goal from a long-range shot, which beat Tanzania and got the second goal for Nigeria. And this was the player who was the top scorer for Nigeria at the last AFCON. So him finding his goal-scoring boots is actually a very good omen, especially since he had been off form for quite some time this season. But finding his boots for Nigeria is good news. Then we had Victor Osimhen, who got in a lot of actually good spaces. So he made good runs, got into good spaces. A few of them were offside though, but then he did good in terms of his positioning and all. But then the final thing missing was the finishing. And if you remember from the last Africa Cup of Nations, Osimhen was not really the man to finish the goals for Nigeria. He sort of was working as the target man who was doing all the hard work for the likes of, that is, Ademola Lookman to get the goals for the Super Eagles. And he seems maybe he could be playing a similar role for this edition too. That could be good omen for Nigeria. That Osimhen, despite not getting the goals, is still sort of being dangerous. He still looks dangerous on the pitch every time he's making an attempt for the ball. But the not so good side will have to be that the team was so vulnerable, very, very vulnerable to counter-attacks, especially when they played against Tanzania, because the game plan for Tanzania was to soak pressure and hit on the counter break. And it almost worked out for the Tanzania side, who got 1 goal through a counter-attack against Nigeria. For Tunisia, they had the almost perfect game against Uganda. So they controlled the game very well. Not controlling possession. They left possession for Uganda to play, but it was not as if Uganda had possession to even create chances. It was possession to just pass the ball around and not be able to even create chances, because the entire game, I think it took about 45 minutes before Uganda created their first chance of the game. And even the whole match, it took almost the 90th minute before Uganda got the only goal they scored. So literally it was Tunisia controlling the game, and that was because they played so swift. They were so swift and knew how to make decisions in the final third of the opposition. Players moved so swiftly, and they allowed the ball to flow and created their chances through that way. And with that, they had Achuri getting 2 goals in that game for, that is, Tunisia. And even their fullback Abdi getting an assist in the game. So their fullbacks were running all throughout, widening the pitch and having their midfielders also drop into attack to create dangerous moments and get the goal. So for Tunisia, it looks like the vulnerability of Nigeria to be vulnerable to counter-attacks would play perfectly to the fine tune of Tunisia, because they actually know how to make use of the ball in the final third, especially when they get in transitional moments. But this same transition could also move to the advantage of, that is, Nigeria, because Tunisia's goal they considered was through a transitional play, and they considered a couple of chances through transitional play. So because they push a lot of their fullbacks all the way forward, when in transition, they are so vulnerable in that way. So maybe Nigeria will want to, this time, play the Tunisia way, try and allow Tunisia to have more of the ball, come and attack them, and then go strictly, go on the counter boot. And they have the men to give the passes, from Alex Iwobi, who showed it in the first game, to even Ndidi, who has done similar things, even from the last World Cup qualifiers into this game. Another thing to talk about in this match, which I think will be very crucial, is the fans. So Tunisia created the perfect atmosphere for their players in the game that they played against Uganda. They had a lot of Tunisians flying into Morocco to come and support the national team. That's because the proximity is not that far, and even in terms of affordability, it's so affordable to move between Tunisia and Morocco. So a lot of the fans moved in to come and support their national team. And they created the sort of home away from home feeling. At a point in the game, you could feel that the Uganda players were intimidated by the atmosphere created from the Tunisia fans. They were literally whistled at every touch from the start of the game. Immediately, a Uganda player touches the ball, you hear whistling, even from the TV broadcast. You hear a lot of whistling in the stadium. And so I think we'll see a similar thing for the game between Nigeria and Tunisia. But I do not expect the Nigerian players to really get intimidated by this atmosphere, specifically because these are players who have played at so many different stadiums at the highest level. They should have seen this a lot of times, and they should be normal to them, and then they should be able to play their game against Tunisia. But the head-to-head for these two sides is actually something to really look at. That's because since 2009, we cannot really differentiate who is the better between the two. That's because Nigeria has won one game. That was in 2019. They won against Tunisia. Tunisia also won one game. That was the next edition in 2021. They won against Nigeria. And the remaining 4 games they've played since 2009 have all been draws. So these are two teams who it's always difficult to separate them when they play. And even on paper, it's difficult to stick my neck out and say the clear winner will be Nigeria. The clear winner will be Tunisia because they balance each other out on so many things. But to predict the game, I think Tunisia will be just slightly favorites ahead of Nigeria. But then, the most likely outcome, yes, the most likely outcome in this game, I think, is going to be a draw again. We're going to see a draw again in the game between Nigeria and Tunisia. But what do you think? Do you think it's going to be a draw, or Nigeria can pull the win, or Tunisia will get their next win? This game also means that whoever wins qualifies to the next stage. So there's a lot at stake in this game. But let me know in the comments, who do you think is going to win this one? Nigeria, Tunisia, or it's going to be a draw?